Thank you for being here, ladies and gentlemen. I will be summarizing the full paper, and then I will let Professor Teh and Lam Kiong expound on some of the rationale for our recommendations. So this is a little bit repetitive. We always start out by expressing our appreciation, especially Ying Sui Si Yuan. My grandparents, my parents have benefited from a fantastic public housing scheme. What we are trying to do here is to ensure that our children and our grandchildren and their grandchildren can also enjoy a very solid public housing scheme. So while things have been going on well for the last 50 years, 5 decades, glorious years, we have now come to a point where there are major challenges which we have to deal with. If you would like to come up here to sit yourself. Yeah. There are two major challenges which Casey has touched on a little bit. First, decaying value of old flats. 20 years ago, we would be saying that, look, 99 years is a long time. Look at other countries, 25 years, 50 years. In Singapore, we haven't come to that stage yet. But it seems like we are now entering a phase where we have got to start dealing with this fuse on the bomb that is shortening as we speak. The decaying values of old flats also coincide with an aging population, and our fathers and grandfathers, their life savings, especially for the bottom 50% of the population, the bulk of their life savings are tied up in their HDB flats. And these old HDB flats values are shrinking as they need to retire and cash out to fund their retirement. Secondly, the current prices of BTO flats relative to young people's first-time home buyers' salaries, incomes, as well as the poor people or people with irregular income is pretty high. So that gap is something that we want to address. So we will have 4 proposals today. One is a lease renewal proposal. The other, an extensive rebuilding program, as well as then how we can deal with the second challenge, reducing BTO prices for home buyers, and then having more rental flats to allow our low-income earners an option. Today, the option is only one: please buy flats. Tomorrow, that option should be expanded. So, first, before we go into the solutions, how do we define old flats? In our paper, old flats are defined as flats over 50 years since completion. Not sure if you would be able to picture some of them. Consider Commonwealth Crescent. Consider, for example, Circuit Road, Aljunied. Look, I'm not giving you guys tips on how to buy something that would give you a windfall because SIRS is coming. There are a lot of old flats. But just so that you can keep a mental image for what these old flats might be, I'm mentioning 2 locations. So, Circuit Road in Aljunied area, Commonwealth Crescent. Flats over 50 years of age means that they are left with 49 years or less on their leases. So let's look forward as well as backward. How many flats were completed in the 1960s since HDB was formed, then in the 70s and 80s? From the chart, from HDB's annual report, we can see that next year we will have 220,000 flats that are more than 40 years old. We can safely assume the 1960s flats have more or less been demolished, except some of those that we have put under conservation in Tiong Bahru, for example. So the 1960s flats are almost all gone. 1970s flats, by the year 2020, they are more than 40 years old. 300,000 flats are 30 to 40 years old. I'll give you a clearer reason why we are focused on this 40 to 50 year transition mark. Now, extrapolate 10 years from today. More than 200,000 flats will be more than 50 years old. And more than 500,000 flats. Today's total stock is 1.06 million. But 10 years from today, half of today's stock will be more than 40 years old. Okay, so remember these rough numbers, because later on I'll explain the value depreciation. So the issue that we are facing today, just now, we talked about two issues. Value depreciation of old flats is the first one. The 99-year lease causes the value of the remaining lease to drop, and it hits hard from after the 50-year mark. The flat value forms 75% to 90% of the bottom 50% of our household's asset value, their savings. And if your HDB flat forms so much of your savings, and yet it is depreciating away as you are moving from 70 years age to 80 years age, it will form a bit of a livelihood issue, because we can't really eat our bricks to live. So it threatens our retirement adequacy if we allow the flat values to keep depreciating. This is the Singapore Land Authority leasehold table. You are comparing two pieces of land, not built yet, two pieces of land, one piece freehold, another piece 99 years, and you're comparing its value over time. And so there was a Mr. Bala who worked for our government who did this calculation, and in the 1950s, your calculators are abacuses. And so there's some rounding off errors and there are some assumptions put into it, but later on in the next two charts, I'll explain a little bit about the Bala's table and the depreciation of our HDB. Then the second problem now that we are trying to address is the high cost of new HDB flats, HDB BTO prices, relative to the current income of first-time home buyers, plus moving forward into the gig economy in the next 10 years, more and more people will be having unstable incomes. Buying a home and locking yourself into a 25 years loan with monthly repayment requirements has a basic assumption that the young couple has got a steady income. But when one of the two lose their jobs, it is a 50% income reduction. So that's going to be a huge impact. Okay, so we detour a little bit to explain Bala's table. This is the table that is used. In this one, there are two tables, there are two charts. One, the blue line, which is the Bala's table. The other one is the black line, that is an estimate that the Center for Livable Cities, two researchers, Quack and Ho, decided to run a more modern method of estimating how Mr. Bala arrived at his curve. But suffice to say, at the 50-year mark, land value drops by about 25%. That's the green straight line here. And then at the 70-year mark, the red vertical line, it shows that the value drops by about 40% as compared to a freehold land value. This is not with property built on it. So this table is important because it is the reference that HDB SLA will use if you decided to sell back part of your HDB lease to the government for cash. This is a reference. For a property developer who has bought an old 99-year piece of land that is, say, left with 60 years, let's say Mandarin Gardens go on block, and it has, Mandarin Gardens is about 30 over years old, and to top up the lease back to 99 years, this is the reference table. So it's either to top up leases to be paid a fee to the government, or it is for the government to pay you when you are selling back some of your lease to the government. So this is the reference, and that's why Bala's table is important. However, Bala's table actually refers to a theoretical maximum value because it just assumes two pieces of land, one freehold, 199 years, or 60 years if it is industrial land. It doesn't assume market conditions such as home loan restrictions, CPF usage restrictions. So as a HDB flat gets older and older, this curve attempts to simulate a Marine Parade HDB flat that is at 56 years of lease. And how, as it goes forward, fewer and fewer young people will be able to afford to buy this old flat because of restrictions on loans and because of restrictions on CPF usage. So they must take out more cash. They must loan for a shorter period of time, or they can only loan a smaller quantum of money to buy the flat. So that shrinks the pool of addressable buyers, and if there are fewer buyers for your flats, naturally there will be a lower price as the flat ages. So Bala's table shows a theoretical maximum price. In effect, the depreciation of flats that are beyond 40 and beyond 50 years of age, the depreciation is actually worse. So that eats into the retirement wealth that our parents and grandparents have stored up for their life. So our four proposals, starting from the first two, which will be dealing with how we combat the issue of decaying property values. We want to propose a lease renewal program for old age HDB flats. Any HDB flat hitting its 50-year mark will be automatically renewed back to a 99-year lease, a one-time automatic top-up of HDB flat leases. Current flats that are past its 50-year mark, we recommend a top-up back to 99 years once the policy is adopted and enacted. There will be a fee to pay when you get this lease extension. This fee to pay, we are proposing a 3% of average market value of resale HDB flat in your vicinity of comparable types. You will repay this 3% over the next 10 years. We are proposing that the fee be even lower or just a nominal value for low-income families. So that has got to come from a means test. Second proposal, again to tackle the issue of decaying leases, decaying property values. We want to recommend that every HDB flat be rebuilt before it hits its 100-year mark. The rebuilding will be at government cost. It will be for Singapore citizens only. So permanent residents who happen to be in a flat that has reached the 90 to 100 years of age, when this program comes to your neighborhood, PRs would have to sell back its remaining lease to the HDB, sort of like a SERS, and then PRs can rebuy another resale flat in the open market. So PRs will not have this privilege of having a brand new HDB flat rebuilt for them. Thirdly, and fourthly, which is dealing with the affordability of BTOs as well as the low-income earners and the gig economy wage earners, we suggest that BTO flats be sold at construction cost price of around $180 per square foot. That would mean a 3-room flat would be at about $100,000. This would be 55 to 60% of current resale flat prices, and it would reduce the need for long-term home loans for our home buyers. especially for the younger families. It will reduce from a 25-year loan, which is typically what a young family would be taking, down to 10 to 15 years. Each young citizen will be entitled to a one-time purchase of such a BTO. We think that by working out the sums, actually $180 per square foot is sort of leaning on the high side already, and that the inflation of construction costs, if we had such a big program in place of reconstructing every HDB flat over a 100-year period, that we'll be able to hedge some of these costs because we can plan forward, we can buy materials forward in a big way, and so inflation on construction costs should be manageable and minimized. However, if we were to suddenly reduce BTO flats pricing down to $180 per square foot, there is a concern that it may then hit the resale market values. It may even hit private residential properties values. So to alleviate this, young people who are subscribing to buy these very affordable flats will be locked in with a minimum occupation period of 15 years. And if during these 15 years, due to financial hardships or changes of their life situations, they really need to encash it back, HDB will take back these 15-year-old or 10-year-old flats from them at a cost plus adjustment factor. And the adjustment could be based on published interest rates, published inflation rates, published GDP growth rates. So we are asking for a transparent formula in terms of this pricing. Having this 15-year runway where we lock up these cheap flats from being sold in the open market, we will prevent them from competing with resale pool of flats within the first 15-year period. Market prices would start to adjust such that prices of the resale market will also be more moderate and will stop running away sky high. Then, still on proposal 3, we further propose that every citizen be entitled to a second bite of the cherry when they are above 65 years old, because our starting point is a concern for retirement adequacy of our old folks. So at 65 years old and after, if you had enjoyed one-time BTO, low-cost pricing, fine, you are allowed a second time. If during your lifetime you have never bought a first-time BTO, after 65 you are still allowed to downgrade from your private apartment, for example, to buy a smaller size flat, again at the $180 per square foot cost. Because the aging demographics, just like the aging HDB flats, look at the chart. It is not something that we can rewind. Every day we are getting one day older. Look at the baby boomer group. Within the next 10 to 15 years, the shrinkage of that group is not by choice. When that group shrinks, 90% of them are homeowners. 80% of them are HDB owners. They will be bequeathing the property that they own to their children. But their children, who are probably at, say, the 40 years age group, they are already homeowners. So when these age cohorts start to pass away in the next 10 to 20 years, the most likely scenario is that their HDB flats would be out in the resale market. And who would be buying in the next 10 to 20 years? These small cohorts, much smaller than the cohort that is going to be passing away. So there will be an excess of resale supply versus young children's demand for these old age flats. And that will exacerbate the price pressure downwards further. Who asked you all didn't give birth more? So we are also adding into our proposal the final bullet point that HDB ought to build more low-cost studio flats. Today, HDB is building low-cost studio flats, what we call the two-room plus study. But in terms of absolute numbers, this year, HDB launched like 16 to 17,000 built to offer flats, BTO flats. But out of that, 10%, 1,000, maybe in the low-cost studio flats. Look at the cohort of people passing the 65-year mark. So this is insufficient today. But more importantly, these flats be sold not with 30-year lease. These flats should be sold with 99-year lease, so it satisfies the bequest, the desire to bequest or to will your property to your loved ones and your beneficiaries. Proposal number 4, for low-income families, we are asking for an increase in the number of good quality subsidized rental flats. Basically, for the bottom 30% income earners, including zero income, including retirees, subsidized rental flats must come with security of tenancy, unlike today's subsidized rental flats, where you have got to justify every 3 months about how poor you are and how needy you are before you are allowed to continue renting the flats. This one, we are proposing that the tenancy agreement be signed such that it is strongly in favor of the tenant, not strongly in favor of the landlord, and that it should be pegged to a percentage of the take-home pay. We are basically looking at the bottom 30% income earners. Just a sidetrack. Out of 1.33 million households we have today, bottom 30% includes about 260,000 households. The 260,000 households earn up to $3,999 a month. And this $3,999 a month includes employer CPF contributions. If I'm not wrong, it also includes government handouts. Can you imagine $3,999 minus CPF, take-home pay is how much? And then this $3,999 actually includes government handouts, such as some of the GST rebates, utility rebates. And we have got 360,000 of such households amongst us. Then, furthermore, 15 to 20% of today's housing stock could be set aside for rental. Today's housing stock is 1.06 million. So about 150,000 to 200,000 should be set aside to satisfy the needs of these 360,000. So we are in fact offering them an option to continue to rent. And if you were rich and you downgraded from a private property, but you are at 70 years old, you really want to enjoy the cash that you have saved, sell your private property and have an option to rent too, because you are a zero income earner. Okay. Despite these proposals, we believe that there will still be families who are unable to pay for lease renewal, the lease extension, and they are unable to probably take care of some of the municipal fees as well. So again, we want to ask for means-tested subsidies for the very poor households so that no one gets left behind. So how does this benefit Singaporeans? How does it benefit you and me? We will have improved security and retirement adequacy. We will have affordable, high-quality housing that we refresh because we are rebuilding them every 100 years. We will definitely have a lot more savings available for investments, for our entertainment, for our leisure, and more importantly, because we are a growing population, we want to see more cash being available for healthcare needs. For first-time home buyers, of course, the much lower price of a BTO flat, cheaper and more affordable, celebration for them. shorter term loan, shorter locked-in handcuffs of the 10 to 15-year bank or HDB loans would free our youngsters also for more entrepreneurial pursuits and investments. And then, more importantly, the last bullet point, low-income earners as well as the gig economy income earners. Just recall in the 2 weeks ago, the PMD meet the minister sessions. So many income earners today are not having stable long-term income. Our proposals extend to them a lot of additional security such that they can get their life back in order, not having to worry about cash flow every day. Then how does this benefit Singapore? Macro-wise, improvement in retirement adequacy means that the state doesn't have to fund so much more social welfare programs. It removes some of the social welfare costs from the people who needs it today. National reserves, we believe, will keep increasing. Later on, I'll ask Professor Tay, when he is talking about this urban regeneration, how come land value and our national reserves will keep adding on. Upgrading of all our homes every 100 years. We've got about 25 HDB estates. Each estate, on average, 4 years, we will upgrade one estate. That estate becomes the smartest estate in Singapore because it will have the best technology, communications, it will have data centers incorporated within a housing estate. The transportation system can include drones as well as driverless vehicles and a lot more high-tech tech that is disrupting our work and creating the gig economy today. Those will all be incorporated every time we refresh the HDB estates. So, I've come to the end of my piece. I now invite Lam Kiong to explain to you the economics of how we think that this can be put together and that it is actually not too expensive, this entire program that we are proposing. Lam Kiong, please.